Welcome in. It is the Northside Baseball Podcast. I'm Mitch Whitmire. He is Jason Ross, talking anything and everything Chicago Cubs baseball. However you get your podcast, we always appreciate you tuning in. Jason, as always, good to see you. Another week in the books. Cubs kind of rolling along a little bit. You can see if you're watching this via our YouTube channel or our website, the topics to the right. The schedule, we'll get to it, but it certainly is going to toughen up a little bit here the next couple of weeks. And really, if you want to stretch it out, it's going to toughen up for the long run, because this little month of May that they had, we had talked about it a couple of times, was really, really lenient. You saw the Marlins, the White Sox, the Rockies, the Reds, some of the bottom feeders in Major League Baseball, none more so than Colorado. So we'll get to that. I did want to start. I feel like every week we have a bullpen topic, and it's just kind of like an ever-changing topic for the Cubs, who we can talk about, what we can talk about, roles, things of that nature. I want to bring up Ryan Pressly because in Cubs circles on social media, primarily on X is kind of where I do a lot of my scrolling. A lot of people are bringing up Ryan Pressly's recent stretch. He had that implosion against the Giants a month ago where he gave up 8 runs before getting yanked, and he hasn't allowed a run since. And a lot of people are like, hey, Ryan Pressly's starting to turn it around. And so I wanted to just pose the question to you, Jason, whether or not you think Ryan Pressly is starting to turn a corner. I would say, I'll get out of your way, but I'll say I'm still extremely hesitant. Most, not all, but most have come in super low leverage situations, his appearances since that implosion against the Giants. I guess if you really zoom out the microscope, the number that people keep bringing up, Jason, that I'm seeing again on X is people are like, he's gone 9 straight outings without allowing a run. To me, it's a bit misleading because there still have been some shaky performances. Just like a week ago, May 26th against the Rockies, he gets 2 outs, then allows a walk, a single, gets yanked. Pomerantz comes in and gets the final out of that inning. The StatCast numbers are still incredibly worrisome. To me, he still doesn't have the put away stuff to be considered a guy for the closer's role. I like Palencia there for now. I know a couple days ago in his last outing, his most recent one, he struck out 3 Cincinnati Reds hitters. I think that was the first time this year he struck out 3 in an inning. I'd have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure it is. Where are you at with Ryan Pressly? Because I think some are starting to turn a corner, and I'm just a little more hesitant to being like, yes, he's all the way back based on kind of what the data says and what the numbers are. I think he's getting better, and it's good that he was able to put behind, at least for now, that horrific showing against the Giants. But if we're talking about a guy that, hey, we can put him back in very high leverage spots in a 9th inning of a run game, that's where I would kind of pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah, he's not going to be closer number 1. I think Palencia has kind of put a stamp on that position right now. But if you take out even the earned runs over his last 9 appearances, he's got a 25% strikeout rate. He's got a 9.4% walk rate. His BABIP is a 333, so it's not like he's getting like super unlucky. In fact, that's probably a little high for how he's pitched. He's got a 2.20 FIP. He's seen an uptick in strikes, an uptick on first pitch strikes, an uptick on swinging strikes, an uptick on chase, and an overall whiff percentage increase. Yeah, that's better. That I believe that this is better. This is he's not my closer right now. I'm not necessarily saying he's my setup guy, but he's probably worked his way out of. This is the guy who pitches when you're up by 7. It's like where they kind of had to go down to. He's looked much better. You bring up an appearance where he gives up a walk and a hit. Those are going to happen. It's bullpen. You're talking small sample size. Starting pitchers, they do that all the time, but they get 5 innings that day and you kind of forget about it. When it's your only appearance, it's a lot easier to kind of point to this one. Oh, you gave up 2 base runners. I think he's much better. We're seeing hitters swing and miss on his stuff more. He's throwing more strikes. He's getting more chase. Those were a lot of the issues he had early in the season. Cause for pause. It's that of those 8 appearances, or those 9 appearances, 8 of them have come against the White Sox, Reds, Marlins, and Rockies. So yeah, if you want to say I'm a little hesitant right now, I think you're perfectly fine. I would say 8 innings is not enough to make sweeping changes on how we feel about him. With that said, I think you could also say that 1 bad outing is also probably not enough to make gigantic changes either. I think he looks better. and just the bullpen in general. This is kind of something I was going to save, but I think maybe I'll just bring it up right now. Did you know that since April 19th, the Cubs have the
You're
best
gonna
ERA?
say exactly what.
Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah.
I literally have it right in front of me since April 19th.
First in ERA, yeah.
First in ERA, first in WHIP, first in opponent's batting average,
Yep.
first in
Second
fewest
in
home runs allowed, second in FIP, second in F4. The bullpen since April 19th.
Yeah,
I did
it's been
not know that
awesome.
until I saw that, and I was like, I was gonna feed into that, so I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, that was what I was gonna pivot to next.
It's right on my note sheet. I saw it on
awesome.
I saw it on a tweet. I think right like when
So
I was doing my research. Yeah. It was taught on a tweet. So, I think he's playing a role in that. I mean, the bullpen, the blow up is in there too, but I think he's playing a role in that. I think Presley is he's a useful arm in the bullpen now. So he's gone from like pariah to like if it's like the 7th inning in a game and it's like a 2-run game and Presley comes out, I'm not like, oh man, I'm worried. I might not be like, I might not feel that it's a guaranteed lockdown inning yet, but like he can get through those innings right now, and especially as he starts to work through some of these kind of like lower level teams. We'll talk about the schedule, obviously here in a few minutes. I'm starting to trust him a little bit more. I don't know how you're feeling about that. If you're still building up some trust and you're hesitant, but I know I'm building up a little bit of trust. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I should have maybe prefaced with that. I am trusting him more. I'm pumping the brakes on these takes I'm seeing on Twitter where it's like, hey, start using him in high. I've seen people say like, hey, they should start using him in higher leverage spots, and man, they should consider him for the closer. I think Palencia is doing fine. I like his stuff. Like when you talk about a closer that can slam the door in their stuff, like Palencia can dial it up to 101. He's got an uber amount of confidence. I'm trusting Presley more, whereas even a few weeks ago, Jason, like he came out and my first thought was like, how many base runners is he going to allow before he has to try to wiggle out of harm's way? Whereas now it's like, you watch that outing against the Reds and he strikes out all 3 in an inning. It's like, okay, he's building confidence. He's building rhythm, momentum, if any other word you want to use down that alley. So I am trusting him more. I'm not trusting him to the point where I would like to regularly see him in, a 1-run game in the 8th or 9th inning. I still think for me that's a bit of a stretch, but like you said,
Yeah.
I feel more confident if he's out there in a close game in the 7th inning. I guess maybe if you want to say the 8th inning, that's fine, than what I did a few weeks ago. Like he's clearly getting better and more confident, which is good because we talk about a bullpen and specifically the Cubs. I think that at least last couple of years, that's sort of been a weaker point as far as them trying to navigate it and trying to figure it out. If Presley can just be a chess piece that Craig Counsell can use in maybe a variety of roles. Like maybe you still do shuffle him out there if you're up 4 or down 4 in the 7th inning of a game, but maybe you do also flirt now with the idea of bringing him in a closer game later on. I just didn't like the idea yet of some that I'm seeing on X saying like, hey man, there were people that were saying they thought he unfairly lost the closer's role because of the one bad outing against the Giants, and now he should get it back. And I'm like, I'm good with Palencia. I'm good with that for now.
We should be very good with Palencia.
Yeah.
I was just kind of pulling up his data, and I think one of the big things on Palencia, kind of changed the conversation on Presley a little bit, and why I wouldn't go, to Presley at the end of the day is that one of the big knocks on Palencia was he threw 100 miles an hour, but he didn't get strikeouts. And that was kind of a weird thing that Palencia would do. He has, over the course of since he's become the closer, has doubled his O swing. So he is getting a lot more chase. That slider is starting to become a better and better pitch for him. He looks dominant right now. And you know what? Cause for pause there. Same opponents that we're talking about with Presley, with Palencia. But at the same time, like I feel very good about Daniel in that spot right now. He looks like he likes that spot. He likes to be in that spot. I don't think Daniel's done anything for me to consider putting Ryan in there. I do think Ryan probably lost it fairly. Even if he hadn't given up many runs before that, he had put himself in a couple dangerous situations, and that kind of a situation was waiting to happen. We saw that kind of early in the season that he was putting himself in those positions. But if he can put himself back into a position where he's a right-handed option in the 7th and the 8th inning, I think we all win if that's the case. If Palencia and Hodge can be your right-handed late inning guys that lead into Daniel in the closer role, and you can have a stable of lefties right now. God, they got 1,000.
Yeah.
We started the season off with like no lefties, and now all they have, it feels like, are lefties between Theobar, who's been really good, Pomeranz, who's been really good, Genesis Cabrera, who they've brought in, and we'll see how long he sticks around. They've got Cosgrove in the minors. Luke Little just is looking great in Iowa right now. They got a billion lefties.
Mhm.
So if they can kind of settle the right-handed situation down, if Presley can help do that, I think it's a good thing for the bullpen. And so I'm glad that Ryan's kind of figuring it out. I don't think he needs to be the closer right now. Maybe if Daniel starts to struggle or there's an injury or something like that, we can talk about emergency closer situations. But for now, no, I don't think there's any reason to bring him back in that role.
I like that. You're a pretty straight shooter across the board, because when you just said, Jason, you said it twice, that you didn't say take it with a grain of salt, but you mentioned Presley's recent outings and who they've come against. I remember all the way back in April, Matt Shaw was struggling. He gets sent down later on in the season. PCA, a slow start out of the gates. And you said repeatedly, week in and week out on the podcast, we have to remember who they're facing. Look at this rotation for the Dodgers. Look at the arms for the Padres. Look at the arms for the Diamondbacks. And it wasn't like you giving them a crutch or an excuse. It was based in fact. Like, hey,
context.
I don't think PCA's going to struggle the whole year. Look at who they're facing. I don't think Matt Shaw's going to get sent out of the minors and never come back up. Like, look at who they're facing. And now it's the reverse side of that, where it's like, hey,
right.
Presley's looked good, but we kind of do have to, Presley's going out there regardless. It's not his fault who they're facing, but we can add some layered context to it by saying it is against the Rockies. It is against the White Sox, the Marlins, things of that nature, where it's like, it's not exactly a daunting task compared to if you were facing the Dodgers or the Yankees, or fill in the blank of a really good team that has a really good offense.
I'm a big believer that, kind of my core philosophy with baseball and life and just in general is kind of, when things are going well, they're never as good as it feels like at your peak. Just like when things are bad, it's never as bad as it feels like in that moment. I think it's, we tend to follow extremes pretty often, especially in sports and in baseball. When the team's won 9 games in a row, you feel like you're on top of the world. It's never going to stop. Everything's perfect. When you lose 6 games in a row, it's awful. Everything's terrible. And I think the real truth is always somewhere in the middle. And same thing for Presley. Same thing for Shaw. Same thing for PCA. When things are at their best, they're usually never that good. There's something that there's luck happening to get you there. Just like when things are bad, you're probably having some bad luck that things don't always deserve there. So, I think early in the season, Presley probably had a little bad luck. I don't think he was ever going to not strike. He'd strike out like 5% of his hitters. That was never going to be the case. Just like right now, do I think he's going to give up runs again? Yeah, absolutely. Like, he's not going to go the whole season and go with a 0 ERA either. And context matters. Teams that we play matter. We'll see how it goes. I do feel like he's worked his way back, up into the circle of trust more. And that's good on him. I think it's easy to fold in those situations. Everything's going bad. It's easy to mentally fold in those situations and feel sorry about yourself or feel like you've been unfairly done. And he hasn't done that. He's come back. He's made himself better throughout the year. And so credit to Ryan on that aspect. I hope it continues. He seems like he's a hardworking dude who wants to play ball. And I like that.
Let me ask you this question, and I didn't tell you this one was coming your way. I just kind of thought of it as we were talking about different names, especially the lefties. You're allowed to pivot off of this, like how you answer this, Chase, and I'm not going to bring it up in July or August and be like, remember when you said this? At this very moment, again, we're recording on a Tuesday for a Wednesday. Cubs getting ready for another series as the schedule starts to toughen up. How many at this very moment, this very day, how many arms in that bullpen do you trust? If it's like, hey, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th inning, we just need you to go get 3 outs for us. How many arms are you like, yeah, I feel really confident in that option? How many are there in the bullpen right now, would you say?
I mean, Daniel Palencia for sure.
Yes,
Caleb Thielbar. I've been a big
which is
Caleb guy.
crazy, but I'm glad you said it. It's
I'm gonna.
crazy.
I've been stumping for Thielbar since I first saw him
Yeah.
at the beginning of the season. I know he had like a real kind of tiny rough stretch there, but he's been really good. I trust Caleb to go out there in almost any situation. The guy who I haven't actually, I should have probably started off with, because if there's one pitcher I trust the most, more than Daniel, more than Caleb Thielbar, it's Brad Keller. Brad Keller is. I do not believe we talk about how good he has been. He has been an elite arm this year. I mean, legitimately elite, like elite type stuff. If there's first guy out of the bullpen that you say you got to get 3 outs right now, Brad Keller's actually my guy. I know Palencia is the closer. Keller's the guy I trust the most. I cannot believe I'm saying that. If you told me in February that the Cubs were going to sign Brad Keller, and that at the start of June I'd be sitting here saying, Brad Keller's the guy that I want coming out of the bullpen, I would have told you that a lot of things had gone wrong.
Yeah.
A lot of things had gone wrong. He's a guy I trust pretty implicitly. I would say I know
The
Porter
reason I
Hodge.
asked, by the way, is because I just think there's like fascinating answers that you could convince, like Pomeranz, you could convince me one way or another. You could be like, you know what? He's been so good. Like, there's just no way it's sustainable, but do I trust him right now? Like, how can you not? He's been really good. And it's like Keller's has been nails. Palencia is awesome, but it's like, I don't put Presley in that group yet. And
I wouldn't put Presley in that group. Pomeranz is interesting. If you look at some of his StatCast data, some of it's not particularly all that like lovely. When you look at it, he's not getting a lot of chase, he's not getting a lot of whiff, but he is getting strikeouts. Usually that's kind of a bad combination. He's not walking hitters though, so that's part of probably the way he doesn't have a lot of whiff and a lot of chase, because if you're just throwing a lot of strikes, it's kind of hard to get chase if you throw everything in the zone. I don't think I'm there with Pomeranz yet, like in the 8th and 9th inning of the playoff game. ERA, whatever, but I don't know. There's probably 4 or 5 guys I would trust right now to go out and get those. And I think as the season goes, Ben Brown and Cade Horton are going to have their innings limited at some point. And I would not be surprised if as we go into like late in the season, the playoffs, where those guys are trusted arms in the bullpen too. It's weird. We started off the season in like kind of a situation where I think we thought that the bullpen was going to be bad. We've done this the last couple of years. It's kind of like a hallmark of a Jed Hoyer bullpen, where you kind of start the year and you're like, God, I don't know what we're doing here. Like, they're going to churn through guys for the first like 3 weeks. They're going to blow games. They're going to have guys in the wrong spots. And then like you kind of get into May, and then things start to chill out a little bit and they calm down. And you're like, oh, wait, actually, I think the bullpen might actually be like a strength of the team. I part of this is again, the schedule has eased up. And, as the schedule eases up, bullpen's going to get better. I think the big test is going to be over the course of the next 22 games. We'll talk about that here with the schedule. But if the bullpen can keep it up, and they don't need to be the best bullpen in baseball over the next 22 games, but if they can be a top 10 bullpen over the next 22 games against some really good talent, then I think we do probably have to kind of reevaluate the bullpen just in general. I don't know. Who are some of the guys that you trust, Mitch? I know it's your question, but I'm gonna bounce it back to you. And I won't hold you to it either. But I'm kind of curious as to your guys that you might trust.
Yeah, right now, I mean, I'm not including Porter Hodge just because he's on the shelf, because I said, today you need to go get 3 outs, big spot. I would put Palencia in there. I absolutely put Brad Keller in there. And then I really just start thinking about, like, I want to put Thielbar in there with you. And everything he has shown, it's like you almost have to include him. But if I include Thielbar, do I have to include Pomeranz too? Like, no, but I mean, Pomeranz has gone out every single time and done what he's been asked to do. So I would say Palencia for sure for me. Brad Keller for sure. And then after that, it gets a bit dicey. I would probably lump in Thielbar, because again, I said we can pivot. I'm not going to in August, if one of these guys, goes sideways or the train gets off the tracks, we're not going to bring it back and hold it over the other one's head. But right now, 2 for sure. And I would probably just put, like, if I could break it up into tiers, if that's fair, I would say Palencia, Keller up there. I trust him to go out there and get 3 outs. That second tier, I would put Thielbar, and I'd probably put him by himself. And then that third tier is where I'm like, yeah, Pomeranz can go in there. Maybe Presley starts to climb up towards that range. So that's kind of where I'm at. I just thought it was an interesting question because you just know, like, with the numbers with Pomeranz, like you brought up the StatCast page, but a lot of people are just gonna be like, hey, he's got a 0.00 ERA, and he's appeared in many games, and that was one of the fascinating names. I was just in Thielbar because I know you've been a big Thielbar guy. I was interested to see where
I'm gonna stump for him just a little. I'm gonna stump for him just a little bit more. If you take out his first 5 appearances this year, which he had most of his walks in, he has a 24.6 K rate. He has an 8.2 walk rate. He has a FIP of 2.14. He has an ERA of 113, and he's been the 16th best lefty in baseball this year, according to FWAR. He's been awesome. I think we've gotten a steal out of him for the year that we've gotten. He's been great. He's had 5 walks in his first 5 appearances. He had 5 walks over 2 of them. And if you take them out, his walk rate just kind of has been fantastic. And I don't like to just kind of like completely ignore data. But at the beginning of the year, I'm pretty lenient on like cutting out some of that stuff and being like, well, they're working into it, especially this year with the weird spring training and the Japan and coming back from Japan and everything. Weird start. I think he's been fantastic. Awesome job on the Cubs on picking him up because he's been good over his career, and he just had a bad year last year.
Really bad.
He was terrible. But as coming in at 38, they credit to the Cubs. They find these old relievers, and they're good. They're good in their 1 years. The Cubs find them. So I can't say enough about Caleb Thielbar. I think he's been very good. And just somebody that I don't think gets maybe the love that he probably deserves. So I've adopted him. I've adopted him as my 38-year-old child this year.
100%. It's just how the Cubs have gone about with adding to the bullpen. From our perspective, it looks like there's a lot of just darts at the dartboard. Like Drew Pomeranz is flinging a dart at the dartboard. There's no guarantee that he's going to give you anything. And so far, he's been good. Thielbar, large resume for Thielbar says, hey, he's been a pretty damn good reliever in baseball. But you look at last year and you're like, whoa, he had a terrible year. And then you're like, and he's 38. Like, is this father time? To me, that was a dart at the dartboard signing. Brad Keller was one of those for the Cubs. There was no guarantee Brad Keller was going to be as good as he is or anything close to it. And I just think the Cubs they've hit on some of those. They've hit a couple of bullseyes.
You throw enough spaghetti at the wall, some of it's going to stick. And and I think that's why we look at the bullpen every year, because every year the Cubs come in with like basically a brand new bullpen. And they come up with all these names, and they use them for a year. I think, when we talk about contracts, first off, there's almost no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. You can dump these guys whenever. If Brad Keller doesn't work out, you dump him. If Caleb Thielbar doesn't work out, you dump him. I mean, you're in a situation where if you just bring in enough of them, you'll find some guys, and some of them didn't work out. Nate Pearson has not worked out this year. So where is he? Down in Iowa. And he's probably way down pecking order. It does sound like there's some talk that the Cubs may, Jorge Lopez was recently DFA'd. And I wouldn't be surprised if they bring him back. It's kind of what the Cubs do. They churn relievers in and out. Relievers are volatile. And I think it just takes that first month to figure out, like, all right, which of the spaghetti's stuck this year? I don't think the plan ever was to bring in Brad Keller and he was going to turn into your relief ace. And, June 3rd, he's, like I said, he's the guy I trust the most. He does everything well this year. He's phenomenal. I dare I say he's probably like, I think he probably, if we weren't looking at like saves as like a thing, I'd put him in the All-Star game.
Yeah.
I think he's been that good. I think he's been an All-Star level reliever this year. And, he was a starting pitcher that they signed on a minor league non-roster invite to camp. And so, you throw enough spaghetti, you'll find a couple Brad Kellers, you'll find a couple Caleb Thielbars, and you'll have a couple of Nate Pearsons and Julian Merriweathers, where it just didn't work out and you move on from them when you see it, and it's on to the next guy.
2 quick things for you. I was so pissed at myself last week. At the end of my little rundown sheet where I have stuff bullet pointed, I had an extra note to bring up to you, and I just forgot to do it. And this was last week, and it still holds true this week. I was going to say to you, and you just brought his name up. I was going to mention to you last week, Jason, like how funny and phony and misleading win-loss record as a pitcher can be. Jorge
yeah.
Lopez this year is 6-0 as a relief pitcher with a 6.57 ERA.
God,
And I had that in my notes last week, and I was like,
that's an
dude,
awesome.
I gotta somehow find a way to bring this up, and I just completely forgot. And it was at the bottom of my sheet. And so when you brought up his name, I Googled it again because the light bulb went off. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot to bring that up last week. And 6-0, 6.57 ERA, which to me is just absolutely insane. And the other point I want to bring up is I think a word we've both used in different podcast episodes about bullpens is how volatile they can be and how
Very
true that
volatile.
really is. And if you remember, and I was one of them, a lot of Cubs fans were very smitten on the idea of trying to get Tanner Scott in, and Tanner Scott's a really good relief pitcher. Tanner Scott's last 7 appearances, Jason, 6 innings, 12 runs, 13 hits, 2 home runs allowed, 3 blown saves. And
I mean,
do I think that's going to be the norm for Tanner Scott? No, I think he figures it out. But the point is, bullpen pitchers, if things go a little off the rails, it can turn into something a lot larger that could span a few weeks. And Tanner Scott, he's going through it right now. Again, last 7 appearances, 6 innings, 12 runs, 13 hits, 3 blown saves. Do I think that's going to? No, he'll figure it out. He's too good of a pitcher not to.
Go on all you have to do on Tanner Scott is go on his StatCast page and you see how good he's been.
Yeah.
Oh, he's in the 98th, 97th percentile in chase. He's in the 95th percentile in walks. It's not like he's losing velocity. He's still got good whiff. He's still got good K percentage. He's getting some barrels right now. And when you pitch 50 innings, which is, a third of the starting pitcher. And I talked about Ryan Presley. We think of those like kind of outings like, oh, well, he gave up 2 base runners in that inning. And it's like, oh, well, that's a bad inning for Ryan Presley. Yeah, giving up a home run isn't a good inning for anybody. But if you throw 6 innings, give up 1 home run and 3 runs, we call that a quality start.
Yeah.
But a reliever gets 1 inning, has 1 bad inning, and that's all you remember, right? That's all you see for the day. I think it's why they're so volatile. It's easy to have a bad short 5-game run, and then that's all we think about. When a starting pitcher, that might be 1 start that they have in a 2-start week. So it's a little weird like that. Like I said, kind of at one point, things are never as good as when they're perfect, when things are going well, and things are never as bad as they look when they're going bad. But that's also why I don't mind not spending money on like a Tanner Scott. And I think that's probably why the Cubs' philosophy on bullpen is kind of this way, where it's like, listen, I can make do with a Caleb Thielbar and I can make do with Brad Kellers. And if I just pick up enough of these guys and I bring in guys like Tyler Zombro and I have good scouting and development, I can do more with less. In a perfect world, the Cubs spend money to just get a Tanner Scott and everything's fine anyways. But, I think, one of the things that we have to just, I don't like it, but we have to accept is that's just kind of how the Cubs operate. The Cubs just they're not going to spend like the Dodgers. They're not going to spend like the Yankees. They're not going to spend like the Mets. So if they're not going to do that, then you're going to have to find some fringy ways to spend some money. And I think one of the ways that the Cubs have handled that is the bullpen.
Yeah, you got to be really good at identifying talent on the margins if you're living life that way.
Or you bring in enough. You just bring in enough guys. I think it's what they do. They bring in enough guys, which is why we have a Brad Keller. If you bring in a Brad Keller and a Caleb Thielbar and a Ryan Brazier and a Nate Pearson, some of these guys work and some of them don't.
Yep. Absolutely. Northside Baseball Podcast, Mitch Whitmire, Jason Ross with you. However you get your podcast, always appreciate you tuning in. Schedule toughens up. It does. The month of April was brutal. No team had a harder month in any month than the Cubs in April. May, it got super lenient. June, it kind of evens out, I guess. I don't know. That's kind of a weird way to look at it, but there's definitely some tougher series, some against lesser competition, but baseball's baseball. Like the Cubs could take 2 of 3 this week from the Tigers and then next week lose 2 of 3 to the Pirates, and we'd be like, baseball. So, but the schedule does toughen up. After seeing plenty of Marlins, Reds, Rockies, White Sox sprinkled in, it's almost like back to reality a little bit. starting with the Nationals, who to me are so fascinating. I've only watched like 4 or 5 Nationals games this year, but I've kept tabs on them. They're not a rollover team. They're 3 games under 500. They do have some promising young talent. Like, I think if you're a Nationals fan, there's some names you can look at that are exciting when you talk about whether it's Gore or Wood. Abrams.
James Wood's
There's
real good.
there's names that are exciting, that are young, that you're like, hey, we can hopefully build around this in the years to come. So it starts with the Nationals. After that, you have 3 with the Tigers, who are just cruising along. You're gonna see Scooble Friday night against the Cubs. Phillies for 3 after that. It's a good little sort of litmus test of a 9-game road stretch to really see where the Cubs are at. You also get the Brewers and Cardinals peppered in there this month. So the schedule, it's gonna beefing up for the Cubs. What kind of stands out for you with it? Again, I mentioned it starts. We're recording Tuesday for Wednesday. It starts tonight. If you're listening on Wednesday, it started last night against the Nationals and then the Tigers. And I thought it was interesting. I think Scooble was scheduled to pitch this series against the White Sox, and they pushed him back to Friday. I was like, bring it on, sweet, let's do it.
So I don't. It's interesting that I'm going to bring this up because there was a lot of discourse today on it on Blue Sky between some of the people that I really like, Craig Calcaterra and even Matt kind of weighed in on it. But the discussion of like power rankings and everything. So I'm not a big power ranking guy myself, but I'm going to use it for a moment. Is that MLB.com dropped their updated power rankings for the week, and of the next 22, 13 are going to be teams that are in their top 10. So we're playing a lot of good teams. And teams that are outside of that are like the Brewers and the Pirates. So, one of those teams is probably a little bit better. The Brewers are kind of always a little bit of a kind of an Achilles heel, I think maybe for the Cubs a bit, just because of everything the last couple of years. So that'll be a big series anyways. You kind of mentioned Scooble. I think a couple of the things that pointed out was a lot of those games are on the road. You're playing four on the road against the Cardinals. That's going to be a difficult series. You've got the Mariners who are on that list, and I think that's going to be a tougher series than maybe we kind of think of. Their pitching hasn't been as good as we thought it was going to be, but Cal Raleigh is like turned into like the Babe Ruth behind the plate. He's been so good.
I think he leads baseball. Doesn't he?
He does. I think he's he was like the first catcher to hit 20 home runs before June in a very, very long time. I think maybe Mike Piazza or something like that. It was, I can't remember where I saw it, but it was insane. Like the amount of home runs he's hit. He's up to 22, I think, the last time I saw it. The Big Dumper is just one best nickname in baseball. Refuse to believe that anybody's got a better nickname, but God, he's great. I think he came into the league and the question was always like, was he gonna make enough contact? And the answer is, I guess if you hit 22 home runs, it just doesn't matter. He's been awesome and just a phenomenal defensive player. So I think that Seattle series is kind of the one that kind of stood out to me. It's a team we're not going to see very often. I think playing the Mariners is going to be a little bit of fun. They've got on paper a good pitching staff. In stats, it's about the same as the Cubs this year. They're like 15th and 16th in like ERA and xFIP on the season. Which would be a lot of fun. The Cardinals are in there as well. We got the 4-game set at St. Louis, and we've talked, before on them. I'm still not entirely believing in them. They're 5 games behind the Cubs in Pythag. So the Cubs are better than them on that aspect. They're 21-9 in their last 30. I don't think that's sustainable for that team. So I'm going to double down on my concept that I just don't think the Cardinals are really that good. I think their record's a little bit better. So maybe the schedule is a little bit misleading in that aspect. I guess I still don't believe in the Cardinals. But that could also be some hubris and refusing to change my opinion on it. Yeah. If they're 10 games up, over 500 in September, I'll probably still tell you I don't believe in them. So at this stage, I'm just going to dig my own grave there.
That's fair. I'm with you on the Cardinals. I don't see it holding up long term. They're on a really, really, really good stretch. I would go as far as to say, because when we say that, people are going to be like, oh, well, they're wearing their Cubs goggles. And to counter that point, Jason, I would say I still firmly believe that when the regular season comes to an end, I think the Brewers will have a better record than the Cardinals. That's just kind of where I'm at with it. I can't buy into St. Louis. I don't, with the pieces that they have or don't have in place. So people were talking about them, 5 weeks into the season as a seller, like, oh, Sonny Gray could get shopped. Nolan Arenado, his name was brought up all off season. as a potential trade chip going somewhere else. Good stretch for them. Hopefully the Cubs can, I'd love to see 3 out of 4. I don't know if I'm biting off more than I can chew there. But yeah, the Cardinals are rolling right now. I just don't see it holding up. I don't see that foundation holding up all the way through a
No,
162 game season.
no, and like is Matt Liberatore like an ace starting pitcher nowadays? Statcast says no. He's probably better than than he's been in the past. He's a rotational piece. You can, maybe he's a little bit better than some of his numbers suggest on Statcast, but he's got average whiff rates, average K percent, average barrel, good walk rates, good chase rates. So, there's reason to believe that he's probably better than average, but he's got he's almost been worth 2 FWAR already. So he's like on a just shy of 6 FWAR pace right now. I think in terms of starting pitching, he is like the number 12 pitcher in baseball. I don't like those are the things that I don't believe. Do I think he's the 12th best starting pitcher in baseball right now? No. Do I think he's a top, he's a low end 2? Yeah, you can probably make that argument, but that's not the 12th best starting pitcher in baseball either. So, I think when you find those things, you feel like the Cardinals are getting some positive variance. That happens. Teams get positive variance, so I don't want to completely take that away from them. I guess I just don't believe them as a top 10 team. Could they be a wild card team? Yeah, maybe. With the way that the season's going, I mean, Arizona. We've talked about Arizona. I don't know if they're going to get out of it.
Burns' injury.
Yeah. Burns looks like he's hurt. Their pitching's been terrible. It just hasn't been working for them, which kind of opens up some space. So we'll see. I think they could be like maybe a wild card team, but no, I guess I don't think that they're all that. Then I think a top 10 team at baseball either. So we'll see. But yeah, schedule gets a lot harder. But that also makes it a lot more fun. I find myself as a fan far more interested to watch games against like the Tigers over the weekend than I did maybe the Reds. And I for anybody out there who doesn't know, I live in Kentucky, just south of the border. So I don't get Reds. My MLB.TV gets blacked out when the Reds play, so I have to sail the 7 seas to watch those games because the MLB blackout rules are dumb. But
hey, I grew up in Iowa. You don't have to tell me.
Oh man, that's the worst.
Cubs, White Sox, Cardinals, Twins, Brewers, Royals, 6.
Oh, that's awful. At least I only get the Reds.
Yeah, growing up in Iowa, 6.
I'm technically blacked out from Cubs games, but that's because my phone, for whatever reason, thinks I live in Indianapolis, despite the fact that I have my GPS tuned correctly. So I get blacked out if I'm not on a Wi-Fi on my phone. But I Saturday I was hanging out at home, and I didn't really try to find a stream that day. And I usually try to watch all the games, and I kind of kept it on in the background, and I didn't really look for a stream that day, and that's not usually like me. Whereas playing the Tigers, I guarantee you I'm gonna be tuning into all those games this weekend.
Friday night.
Oh yeah, Scooble Friday night.
TV game.
Ooh, yeah.
I think it is.
I used to not like the Apple TV streams,
it is an Apple TV game.
I like the Apple TV streams. The fidelity that they shoot those things in is phenomenal. I think they're the best.
I don't like having an Apple TV subscription when I've roamed about it and I really don't care for much of the other program. Like as far as what they have to offer on the platform outside of baseball.
Dude, are you telling me that you don't like Succession and Silo?
Never seen either of them. I'm bad with that.
No, not Succession.
Ted Lasso I've seen. I've seen Ted Lasso. I know that was on
not
Apple
Succession.
TV.
Oh, God, what is it? Severance. Sorry.
Haven't seen it.
I will stump for both of those TV shows. They are fantastic, phenomenal. Severance, the season finale on season 2, one of the best episodes I've seen on TV. Period. Fantastic. They probably could have used it as the series finale. It was that good. I love those shows. I used to not believe in the Apple TV subscription, but with baseball games and those two programs, a big Apple TV guy nowadays. Didn't think that I would get there, but I'm there. Apple TV, you're doing it right.
I'm there because of the baseball. That's pretty much it. So yeah, Friday against the Tigers. It's tougher stretch, but definitely more exciting. And you also mentioned, like we did, you get the Brewers this month, you get the Cardinals this month. It should be ever intriguing month of June for the Cubs and definitely for the fans to watch. One name I wanted to bring up today, and I think he flies under the radar so much for his contributions. It's sort of what he brings to the lineup. Obviously, the glove is well known, but Nico Hoerner and the campaign he's had this year, Jason, to
Awesome.
me, he's just so quietly piecing together a really, really good season. It's a lineup that is littered with like some big dogs, Kyle Tucker, heavy hitter, PCA, heavy hitter, Seiya Suzuki, incredible this year. There's name recognition. There's some big dogs in that lineup. Nico Hoerner to me just provides so much that doesn't get enough credit. And I'm not saying from his teammates, from the staff, from fans. I think just in general, Nico Hoerner doesn't
Oh
get
yeah.
brought up as much as he should. I think I like him a lot because he's so different. Like he's a bit of a throwback in a sense. He doesn't have a home run this year in
Nope.
236 plate appearances, but he's in the 98th percentile on whiff percentage, 99th in strikeout percentage. He makes contact, gets on base, he'll square it up. He just doesn't have, home run pop on any
No.
sort of consistent basis, which is to me is just fine. I wanted to talk about him a little bit today because I think he's such an underrated bat in this lineup because the glove obviously dazzles and we all know that, but I'm loving the year that Nico Hoerner's having.
He's having a great year, and I actually just thought of it right now. It just came to my head when we talked about like the home run rate, but then like I had a Statcast page up, when I was doing some research for the episode today, but it popped into my head that Nico Hoerner is the guy we hoped Nick Madrigal was going to be.
Oh wow.
Right. So like when Nick Madrigal got drafted, he was like, this guy's never going to strike out. He's probably not going to hit a lot of home runs, but he's not going to walk a lot, but he's just going to hit baseballs like all day long. And like, he's going to use this like one skill. Like he's going to be like a 70 grade contact guy, maybe an 80 grade contact guy. He's going to use this one skill to like be a great baseball player. And Nico Hoerner basically does that. He hits, when I looked at his Statcast page, you brought it up too. It's probably it's like I brought up Brenton Doyle's in the past, and like Nico Hoerner is probably like my 2025 favorite Statcast page I've come across because he's 98% in squared up, 98% in whiff, 98% in centile in K percentage, 88th percentile in expected batting average, and then bottom of the barrel in exit velocity, hard hit, bat speed, and expected slugging. So like he's a one-trick pony, man, but he's so good at one trick that he just makes a lot of contact, and he makes good contact. Not great contact, but good contact. He makes so much good contact that he's 7% better than league average, and he has 0 home runs. He can do that. He's the guy that we were hoping Madrigal was going to be. The White Sox hoped that Madrigal was going to be when they drafted him, and we drafted him instead. I think that's really fun to think about between those guys, because Madrigal he didn't work out. He kind of didn't have a strong arm. He made
injuries.
Yeah, he had injuries. He made contact, but he didn't really do much with it. And Nico's kind of the guy I think we thought Madrigal could be, or the White Sox thought Madrigal was going to be when they made him a top 5 draft pick. Even dating back to then. So I think that's really fun for him.
What always gave me anxiety about Madrigal was, and I know Nico was obviously at second, and the Cubs tested out Madrigal at third. He would have to like run into a crow hop to get his throw from third to first sometimes, and it always gave me anxiety. Like he had to put every bit of power behind that arm. He'd have to get like a little bit of a running start on grounders to third just to get it over to first, and it always was like he's gonna fire this over there on a bullet that's gonna one hop and go past first baseman. But yeah, it never worked out with him, but it is with Nico.
Fun fact about Madrigal and Hoerner, same draft. So the Cubs got basically what I think, if you go and you read, and I just pulled it up. If you look at his draft profile, right? When he gets drafted, here's what Baseball America wrote about him. Madrigal has been the same player since college. He's an aggressive hitter who makes tons of contact, rarely walks, and doesn't show much home run power. His swing is short, quick, and geared for line drives. He lines the ball to all fields and is almost wholly a singles and doubles hitter. That's what Nico Hoerner is. And the Cubs got him, 20 picks later in that draft. And they were both college players. They're both West Coast players, because Madrigal was Oregon State and Hoerner was Stanford, and boom, they got him. They got Nick Madrigal 20 picks later, and I think that's interesting. It just kind of popped in my head. I've never really made the connection until right this moment, but I think it's fascinating. Basically the same draft. They basically got the best case scenario Nick Madrigal. We had him the whole time.
Yeah, Nico's awesome.
Year.
I had to bring it up
Yeah.
because I think it goes underappreciated at times. And I know a lot of people will bring up like, oh my gosh, he has 0 home runs. That's crazy. And yeah, it is crazy, but that's just not who he is. Doesn't need to be who he is. One thing too that's fascinating with him is, I know you've brought up before, like lineup construction. You don't care as long as Tucker's not batting ninth or PCAs, not or what, like you don't care about lineup construction. I tend to follow suit with that, but I do think if you're talking about like guys that could fit a certain spot in a lineup for those who are purist and believe in a lineup build, Nico Hoerner, if he batted first, second, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, like all those spots, I'd be like, yeah, sure, yep. Like,
yeah,
I just he's so good and very, very underappreciated. He's having a hell of a year, so I wanted to show him some love.
Third in Major League Baseball at a second baseman in F4 right now with 0 home runs. That's awesome.
That's crazy. Northside Baseball Podcast, Mitch Whitmire, Jason Ross. Weekly segment we do. Weekly segment you do, I should say. We'll wrap it up with the minor league report. And you know what I did? I did not even look at your boy Ivan's numbers because I was going to wait to see if you brought him up or the week that he had. I know it's been a slow couple of weeks for him.
Yeah.
I was hoping he would maybe pop a little bit, or maybe
he was all right. I think. I didn't have him listed, but I did look him up just to kind of compile the numbers. I think it was like a 115 WRC plus. Strikeout rates going up a little bit. Still not hitting for a lot of home runs. Would like to see that. It wasn't a bad week. It wasn't a noteworthy great week. He looks all right now. Kind of going through probably some readjustment periods in minors. I haven't been able to watch a lot of his games lately. I've actually been watching a lot of pitching performances recently, which I'll get to in a moment. But actually, the guy that I do want to start with is Jonathan Long. I think Johnny Long is somebody that we need to talk about often and a lot because I think he's going to be important in July. He hit 3 more home runs.
You mean trade deadline?
Yeah, I mean trade deadline. Yes, the month of July, he's going to be important. I think it will be popular. And I know some people are going to say that the Cubs need to keep him and they need to replace Justin Turner with him. I think he's found gold, and he's found money. It was money that we didn't think we were going to have, and I think he represents a lot of what I think the complaints were previously with the Cubs system. If we talk about the Cubs minor league development under Theo and Jason McLeod, who ran that, it was a lot of talk about the Cubs found talent early in the draft, but didn't find talent later in the draft. I don't necessarily think that's always true. Justin Steele was a later round pick during those years. Dylan Cease was a later round pick in those years, not first round picks. That they found some talent. Jeremiah Estrada was another. There was some talent there. It did take some trades and maybe some other teams to develop them a little bit, but they were there. Brendan Little is a second round pick who's doing well. Brian Hudson has made a major league career. So there were a couple guys out there. But Jonathan Long was, a 7th round pick out of Long Beach State, and he has been phenomenal. He had 3 more home runs this week over his last 61 plate appearances. Over his last 61 plate appearances, 6 home runs, 202 WRC plus, 410 isolated slugging. He's walking almost as much as he's striking out. He has been absolutely on fire. He's been over the course of the year one of the best StatCast darlings in baseball in AAA. He looks very, very good. However, he's a first base and a DH. I know a lot of people will say maybe try him at third base, but even after Matt Shaw has been promoted, he's not playing third base. The Cubs are making it very clear. A lot of times I see fans, and not to say that I'm not a fan, but I see people on the internet. They had these discussions like, I think Christopher Morel was the great example of this. Well, let's put him at third base. He'll figure it out. He was a terrible third baseman. Yeah. And when teams don't play, especially when the Cubs don't play these guys at third base or second base, there's a reason why. Early in the year it was, well, maybe Michael Busch could be the third baseman. They didn't play him there. And I think that tells you what they feel about him. He's not a third baseman. He's a first baseman. That's where he belongs. And Jonathan Long's not a third baseman. That's okay. But because he's not a third baseman and he's a first base and a DH, and we have Michael Busch and we have Seiya Suzuki and we have Moises Ballesteros, so I don't know where he fits in organizationally long term, and that's okay. And at some point, assets are assets, and you can use assets to get other things. In a trade deadline year where I think the obvious sellers don't necessarily have what the Cubs want. If we talk about the obvious sellers right now, their team's bad pitching. There's not really a clear-cut starting pitcher who's on the market, which means you're probably going to have to do one of two things. You're either going to have to take a gamble on like Sandy Alcantara, whose velocity looks good, but you're going to probably have to fix him a bit. And do you have 2 months? Can you fix him in 2 months for the playoffs? I don't know. Or you're going to have to go to like a Washington and you're going to basically like have to be like, listen, I know you're not looking to trade Mackenzie Gore now, but what if we offer you this? And I think Jonathan and I think you're going to have to force it, right? You're going to kind of have to force a fringe team to sell a player a little earlier than they might want to. And Jonathan Long is going to be a good added thing for that. He's probably not going to be the headline, but as the second piece behind like a Kevin Alcantara or something like that, you can save yourself somebody else, and I think he becomes important. It could also open up like Moises Ballesteros be the guy that you trade, and I know that it's going to hurt some people, but like it gives you options, right? It gives you options. So like Johnny Long's season is something that I think is incredibly important, and it is going to be very important in July. He's been a good hitter throughout his career. He's been an excellent hitter this year, and I think he's important. So I think he's somebody that I'm going to be paying attention to every week. If he stays healthy and he stays hitting, July is going to be a big month for him. I think teams are going to want him, and I think it's going to help. Either, like I said, open up a Ballesteros trade or feel comfortable moving him. But he's a late round pick that the Cubs have turned into. I think somebody who belongs on top 100 lists. So awesome job on that. Switching to some pitching, guys I've been watching. Jackson Wiggins has been crushing it in Double-A. He went another 5 innings, gave up no runs, struck out 5, did walk 3. He's going to give up some walks, but so far in Tennessee since being promoted, 2.06 ERA, 30% strikeout. He's basically striking out 1 out of every 3 hitters. And his walk rate sits at about 11.7, smidge high. You can strike out 30% of the guys. We'll live with it. He's a real breakout star this year. By the end of the year, when we do like our end of the year wrap up prospect list, I think there's a good chance he's going to be the number 1 prospect.
Wow.
In the organization.
He's not a July guy.
No.
Okay, good.
With the way that the system is, I don't think that the Cubs can trade Jackson Wiggins right now. I think you got to keep him. He's going to be, I think, important next year in the rotation as kind of the next guy up. Maybe they do, but I think Wiggins sticks around. Ryan Gallagher, I brought him up last week. I'm going to bring him up again. He is I have one word written down from over on my notes, and the word is absurd. And the reason I have absurd written down is because of this. Over his last 24 innings, he struck out 42.5% of hitters. 42.5% of hitters in the last 24 innings. It is unbelievable. He struck out 8 again in 6 1/3. He gave up 1 earned run, and he walked nobody. He doesn't walk anybody either. So he strikes out everybody. He walks nobody. He needs to be in Tennessee like tomorrow. I really wouldn't be surprised if we hear that he gets called up this week, maybe midweek. He's again another example of the Cubs finding players later in the draft. He was a 6th-round draft pick. I do need to see him in Tennessee before I start like overhyping him and putting him in like top lists or anything like that. But every year we kind of have like a later round, mid-round pick who kind of does this for a little bit. But the amount of strikeouts he's getting is a little different than some of these guys. A lot of times we see guys who have pretty good numbers, but they're not eye popping. His strikeout rates are unbelievable right now. They're insane. There's just nothing you can say. I think it's like over 30 strikeouts in the last 24 innings. It's stupid how good he's been. Moving past that, if we want to stay on pitching, Will Sanders made his first start in Iowa. Looked pretty good. A little rocky at times, but he averaged like 93 on the fastball. I don't think he's like top of the rotation guy, but I do think he's probably like in that like number 4 or 5 mix, down the road. I think I doubt we'll see him start a game in Chicago this year, but maybe like next year, he could be in that mix with like a Brandon Birdseller, Jordan Wicks, kind of guys who are floating around for some innings. Switching to hitting, a couple of the other guys I wanted to highlight this week. Jefferson Rojas. If Jackson Wiggins isn't the number 1 prospect going into next year, I think Jefferson Rojas will be. And that's because I expect there's going to be some trades. Some of these guys are going to lose their prospect status. And these guys are just having great years. Jefferson Rojas has a 140 WRC plus on the year. He's been 40% better than league average. Over his last week, he had another 158 WRC plus. And if you take out the first couple of weeks, he missed spring training this year. Kind of had a rough like week and a half. Take out that week and a half, 160 WRC plus since April 26th. He's just been unbelievable in South Bend. Him and Ryan Gallagher need to get up to Tennessee pretty quickly. It would make Tennessee a little bit more interesting. And I think both of them have done what they need to do in South Bend. So those are some guys that I thought have had some standouts. I did want to bring up a couple other AAA guys in Iowa just because I think they're important. Big Mo had kind of a pedestrian week. It's like 106 WRC plus, but there's nothing like that in it. It just wasn't like a standout week, but he had a pretty good week, so he's looking pretty good back since his send down. And then Kevin Alcantara hasn't had a very good year this year. His strikeouts have been way up. He's, if we look at a lot of his data, he's really struggled with breaking balls this year, like real bad. But he had a couple home runs last week, had a 150 WRC plus. Maybe we're turning a corner. He's kind of had a habit of starting cold years and then getting hot as the year goes on. So hopefully this is kind of a little bit of a signal that he's ready to get going. But those are just a couple of the names that I had noticed throughout the week that are doing well. A couple of injury reports. Nazir Moulay sounds like he's kind of on the mend. It was a back injury, so he's kind of on the mend. He had a good season up until his last 2 starts prior to that. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But I think the minor league system's just had a great year. It's been fantastic. I think it's going to be important in July, and it's going to be important moving forward as well when we lose some of these guys. And then, moving up towards the draft, we're about a month and a half away from the draft coming in there. So, as much as we're looking at the minor league report, kind of looking ahead to the major league draft in mid-July, I think it's going to be very interesting and exciting. College World Series baseball is going on right now. And yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how the Cubs handle their draft this year and everything. I do think it'll be probably pitching heavy, which is one of the reasons why I don't think they're going to trade Wiggins. I think Wiggins will be kind of one of the guys they keep. They're a little thinner on pitching, kind of depth at the top than they are hitting wise, especially kind of in the lower levels, a little bit thinner. But yeah, I'm kind of excited about the draft and starting to kind of like make like a short list of guys that I think kind of fit Cubs profile. So it'll be interesting to see what we end up doing there and what we add to the minor league report over the last couple of months too.
Absolutely. Let's finish with this. You had brought up, potential trade candidates within that. You mentioned the name like Sandy Alcantara. Where else could you pivot to? Washington. Yeah. Could you pry Mackenzie Gore out of their hands, even though they probably don't want to trade him at this point? I'm going to just throw a name in your direction. Let me know what you think. Zach Allen. And the reason I bring it up is I think he's in the last year of his contract. He hasn't looked like the same pitcher this year. He has struggled a little bit, but I believe he's in the last year of his deal. And if Arizona keeps sinking, and if Arizona believes we just gave a big boy deal to Corbin Burns, we've got money to hand out elsewhere. Maybe not is a home run decision for them to bring back Allen on a big deal if he hits free agency next year. Could you see them parting ways? I was just trying to fish around other potential options. Yeah, and if Arizona does start to sink in the standings and they aren't overly confident that they could bring Gallen back on a bigger deal, you would almost think he could at least be a name that they try to float out there at the deadline to get something back. unless they really believe they could. I still think there's plenty of time for them to turn it back around. But I'm saying, if we get to July and the deadline inches closer and Arizona's fading more and more out of the picture, is that a name that maybe could come up?
I think the Diamondbacks are probably going to have to sell this year with Burns' injury. I don't think that their rotation can survive it. Gallen he's kind of in the same category that Alcantara is in that.
Yep. Alcantara has more team control, I think, if you talk about contract. I think he has 2 years of team control left. The reason I brought up Gallen is for what I said. It's like you'd be getting a rental, but from the Diamondbacks' perspective, if you start to sink, do they look at a guy like Gallen where it's like, man, he's probably still going to command a pretty sizable deal in free agency. We don't think we're going to be in the business of doing that. Let's get something for him now. That was my thought process.
So the reason that I brought up Alcantara's name is he does have more control, but it's the same problem. Gallen has been awful. I mean, just terrible.
Yes, he has.
So you have to, and Alcantara's been bad too. Both of them are guys that you basically have to trade for
and fix
in July, and you have to fix them in 2 months and then put them in a playoff rotation and give up significant assets to do that. And I think you have to ask yourself, is that what I want to do right now?
Yeah.
And do I have enough time? Do I have enough time to get Zach Gallen in to have him buy into what we're trying to sell him, get him comfortable with it and ready for October? And I think that's kind of what the Cubs are going to be in a weird position in the trade deadline right now. If you look at the teams who are likely to sell, Colorado has no pitchers that you want. Maybe Feltner's kind of an interesting arm, but he's a fixer upper. The White Sox don't have anybody in the rotation that they're going to trade. Maybe Andrew Heaney is a guy that you can look for in the Pirates. He's fine.
I would bundle him in though into that same group of kind of what they have. Like you could put Heaney in the same tier as like a Boyd or a Tyon, where it's like I think they need more than that. But again, it's like I don't think there's gonna be a lot of options.
Yeah, and that's so I think there's going to be a lot of options, but not necessarily the options that the Cubs
correct.
Want.
That's why that's a better way to
put it. That's why I think Jonathan Long is going to be very important here, because I do not think. And I'll just go ahead and claim I don't have any inside information here. I'm reading tea leaves and how the Cubs operate, and how they've operated in the past at the deadline and everything. I would say that if you there was Jim Bowden put out an article today with The Athletic, and a lot of names that he thought were going to be available, like 8 teams. Gallen was on there, Merrick-Kelly was on there, Andrew Heaney was on there for a lot of these teams. The pitchers that he thought were going to be available. I will say it right now. I do not think that the starting pitcher that the Cubs acquire will be on that list. I do not think that is the way that they are going to operate. And if you look at the trade deadline last year, while Isaac Paredes was considered, possibly available, I don't think that anybody had Cubs trade for Isaac Paredes last year on their bingo card necessarily. In July, I don't think that was there. And the other player that they tried to pry away was Logan O'Hoppe from the Angels. And I can guarantee you that he wasn't on any list of available catchers in July. He wasn't on those lists. He's been fantastic this year, by the way. But if we look at those lists, I don't think that's who the Cubs are going to trade for. I don't know who the Cubs are going to trade for, but I will say this: I don't think it's going to be one of those guys. I have a feeling that, especially right now, that Jed Hoyer needs, I think, to keep his job, he basically has to make the playoffs. And I think the Cubs are definitely on that trajectory. But they also need like a controllable starting pitcher, who's like going to be like a 1 or a 2, like somebody that you can put in a playoff rotation. And I think if you want that, it's like, I think that's why I brought up Mackenzie Gore as a player who so Gore, I believe, has, he's got how many, he's got 3 years of service time right now. Right. So he's got 3 years of control to go. He entered with 3. So he'll have, I think, 2 at the end of the season, which means he's got 2.5. That's the kind of guy that I think that the Cubs will try to go get. Is it going to be Mackenzie Gore specifically? No, but the Nationals they're not a pushover, but they're not ready right
Correct.
now. And I think if you went to the Nationals and you're like, hey, listen, Gore isn't going to fix your problem right now, but what if I could get you like a starting first baseman, and I could get you a starting center fielder, and I could throw in a lottery, a couple of pretty good, like lower ball players,
Yeah.
like you want to start talking Mackenzie Gore, and I think you can find that. So I will say right now that I think the pitcher that the Cubs acquire will not be one of the ones that we have on our radar. I think it's going to be kind of a surprise. I don't know who it's going to be, but I think it's going to be more in that Mackenzie Gore category, where it's going to be like a team that we didn't really know. This guy was really available, and the Cubs kind of forced it available. That's kind of my feeling on it, but that's just a guess. Which is why I think we'll talk a lot about Gallen and Alcantara and Merrill Kelly and like Andrew Haney, like as we like move closer to the deadline. And I think we will eventually find that it's going to be none of those guys. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll end up being a rental and they'll go like Gallen will like turn it around and it'll just be Zach Gallen. But which I'm fine. Like good Zach Gallen is good, but right now Zach Gallen's terrible. And he's lost velocity this year. So I don't necessarily know he's like fully healthy either. So we'll see. But that's my feeling. I don't know how you feel about it, but that's just my guess on the situation.
Yeah, it kind of makes it more exciting too that the Cubs kind of they don't do the predictable thing. Mentioned Paredes last year, and what could come about this year. I'm with you though. I threw Gallen out I threw it out more from Arizona's perspective of like a name that they could end up definitely trading if things keep going south, and he's.
I think they'll keep going
free agency. Yeah, that's why I brought up not more so as like, hey, this is the fix. This is the answer for the Cubs because he has struggled, mightily this year. And I know there's other names people can throw like if Boston keeps sinking like Walker Buehler, someone could try to take a flyer on him. He hasn't been, star-spangled phenomenal this year, but I think it's another name if Boston decides to go that route. I know they obviously locked up Crochet. He's going to be their ace for the years to come. But yeah, there's definitely names to float out there. I think Mackenzie Gore is a fascinating one. I would sign me up for that if that's even possible. And I know the Cubs start things out with the Nationals, and we got Kate Horton Tuesday, and then they see Mackenzie Gore. Depending on when people are listening to this, but they see Mackenzie Gore on Wednesday. So
yeah,
good lively lefty arm.
I don't think he's an impossible ask. I don't necessarily, I won't like stamp my name that it's going to be Mackenzie Gore, but I think it'll be like a Mackenzie Gore where it's going to be somebody with a couple of years of control. And I think it's probably not going to be somebody who's going to be on these lists, but that's just my guess. I just don't feel like the guy that they're going to go with is going to be the kind of conventional names that a lot of people are looking at. And it could also be a guy that you don't necessarily think is like a great starting pitcher. Like you don't kind of rank him that high in your mind, but then they like get him and you're like, oh, now I get it type of a thing. Kevin Gausman is another name that I think, it could be on there. The Blue Jays are they're playing better now. So I don't necessarily think. But, some of these teams are going to fall off at some point. So
we've talked about the Minnesota arms in past episodes.
Yeah,
Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez. And Minnesota's playing better ball. But again, are they going to be able to keep up with Detroit in the AL Central and, Kansas City, Cleveland lurking? That's kind of like there's a lot going on in the AL Central.
I think the Cubs will use their prospect depth, especially their like upper end prospect depth, because a lot of their prospects are like in Iowa right now.
Yeah.
I think they're going to use those prospects to kind of like almost like can opener a team into getting a pitcher that we don't have like on this guy's like a free agent at the end of the year list, and they're going to can opener a team. I don't know what that team is, and I don't know who that arm is, but that's my guess. My best guess is that the Cubs will essentially kind of can opener a team into trading a starting pitcher because they can offer those prospects that are very close to the major league level too. So yeah, that's my guess. But I don't know. Just reading tea leaves on how the Cubs have operated in the last year.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Plenty of time, obviously, before the deadline.
Oh yeah, lots of time.
That way. Cubs start things out 9-game road trip, 3 in DC, 3 in Detroit, 3 in Philadelphia. So schedule beefens up. We talked about that. You'll see Gore this week. You'll see Skubal on Friday. Some good arms going against the Cubs. I don't know if Wheeler's in line to start next week. That is, I guess, next Monday. That starts in Philadelphia. But yeah, things toughen up for the Cubs. Good sign, as you said it. It makes it a lot more interesting to watch the games. So this has been the Northside Baseball Podcast. He is Jason Ross. I'm Mitch Widmeyer. We'll see you next time.